show here. So I'm going to walk you through the film study that you will be required to submit for this course. I use this in several different courses, so I'm going to try to not be too specific about what I'm requiring in the course you're taking, because I use this in several different courses. So I'm going to give you a very general overview. So I've created a rubric that tells you what I'm looking for in the initial essay that you write, and you need to cite your sources. You need to reflect carefully on all the questions. And then after you submit that, I frequently require you to reply to fellow students. And I walk you through a rubric. It's the same one that I use in my essay discussions. So I use what's called a 3C and a Q, right? And so I'm going to walk you through that because I want you to be really successful. And I think the thing that students frequently complain about is that they don't know what the professor wants. So I'm going to try to explain it as clearly as I possibly can, what it is that I'm looking for, so that you can aim at that target, so you can be really, really successful. So I just love using films and fiction in my philosophy and ethics courses. I do this because I think that short stories, novels, plays, film, dance, art gives us an opportunity to sort of look at life sort of compressed and organized. Actually, some years ago, I was at a conference in London. I was asked to give a paper on the philosophy of Shakespeare, and then that turned into a book called the Shakespeare and Philosophy. And my chapter has to do with the misuse of Shakespeare quotes. But this is what I say about art. It is in the nature of art to creatively order chaos so that truth may be revealed. So art creatively orders chaos so that we can talk about truth. If we try to look at examples in history, there are so many pieces involved and there's so many moving parts. And if you ever really try to say, why did this happen? There are too many variables. But when you come to a piece of fiction, every single word, every single character, every single motive was designed by an artist. So it's not there by accident. And so you can look at it and think about it, and it forces us to look at ourselves. And so that's why I use these films. Occasionally I have students that say, I've already seen that film. I know, but when you saw it the last time, you weren't a philosophy student. And it's going to be different. You're going to see it with different eyes and different lenses because you're at a different place than you saw it the last time. Now, if for whatever reason you feel like I really just saw this film and I'd like another suggestion, you can email me. But I really choose these films very deliberately because of the way they interact with the course material that we're dealing with in this module, in this unit. So this film fits. So we're going to walk you through the rubric that I use, and so that you will make sure that you sort of hit all the marks. So I appreciate that. Sit back and get some popcorn, and I hope you enjoy the film at least, if not this particular rubric discussion. Okay, so I know you can barely read this. It's too small. Maybe you can blow it up on your screen. But I wanted to say, if you could print this out and sort of look at the rubric as a document that's printed out here. This is what I'm using when I grade. So I have spelled out the components of the assignment and assigned them values so you can see what's worth the most points, so you're going to know where to focus your energy. And so when I grade, I go through here and I click the elements that are present and I indicate the present elements that are missing. So this way, it helps me make sure that I'm grading everybody on the same scale. What happens a lot of times as a professor, you read a lot of papers and things can sort of drift as you sort of grade, for a long time, or you start seeing the same essay over and over again. So by using this rubric, I'm making sure that I'm sort of holding everybody to the same standard, and I want you to know what I'm looking for. Okay, so the first piece and the bulk of the points, 50% of the grade, is in the initial essay. And I'm looking at, did you answer the questions? So each film study, besides watching the film, you're going to be looking for a particular element within the film. It may be an ethical issue. It may be a philosophical question. It might have to do with medical ethics, depending on which course you're taking and which module you're in. But you're going to want to make sure that you are looking at the film with the questions in mind that are going to need to be addressed in the essay and the module that it's in, to make sure that you're sort of looking at the film in the right frame of mind for that particular module. And you can see that, if you nailed it, you got all the pieces there, and you reflected on all the questions and you interacted with the module material, then that's fantastic. You're getting there. You've got a lot of the pieces there. Maybe you didn't quite address some of them as more detailed. Maybe you didn't interact as much with the course material. And then it goes down from there. But I want you to know what I'm striving for. I'm looking for excellence and getting there, because that's where I want you to be, so you can understand what we're after. All right, now this is the big one. You addressed all the questions, and the next piece, another 20% of the grade, is did you interact with the course material? That is, you need to cite them. You need to cite many of the course materials, the textbook, the readings, the videos. You need to show me that as you're making your way through this material, you are seeing how it applies to our analysis of these films. And so if you want to get 100%, if you want to nail this section, and you want to get that 20% of the grade, you need to make sure that you are citing the materials. So you want to follow sort of a set pattern, which is you want to make an observation. You want to say why, how you're justified in that observation, and then you want to support that with materials from the course. I have a separate video on citing your sources. Again, I'm not an English teacher, so I'm not looking at where did you put the semicolon. I want to make sure that you are reading the course material and then you're bringing that in. And when you do, you quote it and you cite it to make sure that you're giving credit where credit is due and you are using the course material to help inform your thoughts. All right, so the next piece here is 10% of the grade is just sort of, is it written well? Is it organized? Do you show that you have a depth of thought? Are you being creative? Are you interacting with material? It's written in paragraphs that make sense. Each unit sort of has its own reason for being. Again, I am not an English teacher. If you have struggled with writing, we have great tutors in the Learning Commons, and they can do virtual and in-person tutoring sessions to help you walk through improving your reading skills or writing skills. The main thing you can do is, after you have sort of written your rough draft, is ask somebody else to read it or read it out loud. And I don't know if you know this, but Word has a feature it's called review. And if you click on review, it will actually read your text back to you. And I oftentimes catch mistakes because I hear them and I know they're wrong. Whereas if I read it to myself, I read what I thought I wrote. But when I hear it read, I realize that I've made a mistake. So I just want to encourage you to, give it that extra polish. And this is the difference between a B and an A. This is the difference between a D and a C. Is did you go back and sort of proofread it, look at it to make sure that it's organized and shows creativity and just doesn't have basic mistakes and that it makes sense. Cite your sources. I cannot express this enough. Again, this is 10% of the grade sitting on this. Go back and watch my video about citing sources. And when you watch a film, it is okay to read a review of the film as long as you don't count on the reviewer to sort of explain to you what the film meant, and you need to watch it for yourself. But if you do that, you need to cite them. You need to quote them and cite them. If you want to read outside material, then there's tons of it. Many of these films have been widely written on. There's lots out there. Go ahead and do that. But you need to cite it and bring it into your conversation. Not just quote somebody else, not just let somebody else speak for you, but use your own thoughts and back them up with support from these other sources. All right, so let's move to the discussion part. So I want to make sure you understand. 50% is the essay, and then there's 20% for use of course material, then there's 10% for well written, there's 10% for the actual way you cite your sources. So that's the bulk of it. This part right here, the discussion part, is where you interact with fellow students, and this again sort of separates the B from the C, the A from the B, which is how thoroughly and thoughtfully you engage in these conversations. Again, I found a lot of students are not quite clear what to do with these, and they sort of reduce them to sort of things you would put on Twitter or things that you would do as like just a social media shout out. And I've developed this rubric to sort of walk you through. You're going to give a compliment, you're going to make a comment, you're going to make a connection to the rest of the course material, and then you're going to ask a question. Again, this isn't original with me. I've got this from professional development because it helps focus your attention when you're preparing to reply to a fellow student. What kind of comments are we looking for? Okay, so you're going to make a compliment. You're going to read the person's essay and you're going to reply to them by saying, I really like the way you focused on this character, or the way you dealt with that particular conflict in the film. I hadn't thought of it that way. So you're going to tell them what it is they did that you appreciated. Just simply saying, hey, I liked your post doesn't tell me why. So to get those points, you're going to have to compliment them and explain what value you saw in the post they made. So then you're going to make a comment. You're going to say something that you gained from their thing. I hadn't thought of it that way before, or I was looking at it from my perspective because I was raised in the South, or I was raised by my grandmother, and so you made me think of something in a way that I hadn't thought about it. You make a comment about what they said. Now the compliment and the comment can go kind of together if they sort of flesh out a couple of sentences. All right, now this shows me that you're really doing some heavy lifting and some high level thinking. You're going to connect their essay to other material in the course. So think of it like juggling. You've been doing a bunch of reading, you've been watching videos, then you watched a film, then you wrote an essay. Now you read their essay. So you've got 5, 6 balls in the air, and now you're saying, wait a minute, your comment made me think about the essay we read in the last unit, or it made me think about that the other film we watched earlier in the semester. So you're making connections between the course material and the essay that the student has written and what you're reflecting on. So this is really the gravy here, where you're showing that this is all starting to come together and make some sense to you. And then comes this last piece, which is, that makes me wonder. Your essay made me think about something in a different way, and I wonder. I'm curious about it. I'd like to know more. When I used to drop my kids off at school, I used to say to them, not be good. I would say to them, ask a good question today. This tells me that you recognize that there's still more to learn. To be a real philosopher, to do philosophy, is to recognize that we're dealing with the big questions. What is truth? What is good? What is beauty? And that's forcing us to think in these big questions, and we'll sort of nail down one corner, and then we realize that this other end has popped up, and we need to go give that attention. That's really telling me that you have engaged this material. Okay, and I just want to remind you of a couple of resources that are available for you. First of all, if you go to Doc Shell's Emporium, click on that link and you can see samples of other students' work. If you want to get a good idea of sort of what a solid essay looks like and what a thorough discussion essay looks like with the appropriate comments afterwards. You can also view that video I made about citing your sources. That will help you. And then don't forget the office hours. I'm here in this case Wednesday night, Monday nights. From semester to semester it varies, but I offer online office hours where I'll be here to answer questions. You can pop in and just let me know what you're thinking about the film. Maybe there's a section in the readings you didn't quite understand. You want to make sure you nail that down before you submit the essay. And so stop by. If those office hours don't work, send me an email. We can work something out to sort of get together. But that's a real good opportunity to sort of ask those questions in advance to make sure that you're going to hit the grade that you really want to earn on these film studies. And let me just make a couple last comments. I might call these director cuts. One of the mistakes a lot of students make on these film studies is they spend an awful lot of time telling me about the film and the basic plot and the characters. You don't need to do that, because I've watched the films. I chose them because I really like the message and the material that's in the film. So don't spend a lot of your energy and time sort of going over the basic plot and the. You'll need some to sort of set the stage, and I understand that, but you really want to get into the heart of it, and you want to sort of make sure that you are nailing the question that's asked. So one of the films or books that I use sometimes is one called The Pearl by John Steinbeck, and one of the questions is, who is the most evil person in the novel and why? Okay, so I'm asking you a very specific question, and since it's couched in an ethics course and you have the 5 ethical lenses, you're going to want to use that. So you're going to say, I think that the doctor is the most evil person in the film because, and now you're going to quote words and actions in the text that explain why you think the doctor is the most evil person. Okay, so he refuses to help the family because they're poor. If they have money, he'll be glad to see them, but if they don't have any money, he doesn't have time for them. Okay, then the question is going to be, now that's you've shown me in the text where the action is that you think represents the most evil person. Now you're going to tell me why. How do you justify that? And you say, well, I believe that on a theory of social contract, that the doctor, as a healthcare provider, has a moral obligation to the community and helping the people in the community. That's his role as a doctor. And then you're going to say that violates the social contract, and now you're going to quote the textbook. You're going to quote one of the readings. You're going to quote one of the videos that you've watched about the social contract. You're going to explain how Jean-Jacques Rousseau, or you're going to explain about how Hobbes connects the idea of social contract to an obligation that we have to the greater community, and then you're going to quote them, and you're going to wrap that all up, and you're going to nail that section. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for you to sort of get into the meat of the film, explain, answer the question, quote the film, cite dialogue where the action occurs, and then back it up, justify it with the reason that you think that, and support your reasons with citations from the text, and you will do awesome. All right, I'm looking forward to reading your thoughts on the film for this course, and this is Dr. Shell sauntering on.